The next thing we're going to do is turn the machine on. So there's a switch in the back. Again, the straight line means on and the zero means off. So we're going to turn that on. When you turn it on, there's no display until you press the on button at the front of the machine. So we press the on button on the front of the machine and now the machine turns on. This is a way that you can turn it off when you're working with the patient, or if you're disconnecting, you can just turn off from this point and then go from there. So now that we've turned it on and everything's hooked up, we are going to look at the display for the ECG machine, and it gives us 4 pieces of information. So at the top it says S is equal to either 50 or 25. So S means the speed. So there's 2 speeds. One is 25 millimeters per second and the other speed is 50 millimeters per second. 25 millimeters per second we're going to use for any experiment where the subject is at rest, and then when we're doing exercise we want the paper to come a little bit faster so that the complexes are spaced out a little bit more. So for that speed we're going to have it at 50. So a good rule of thumb, anytime you're doing something at rest, keep it at 25. Anytime you're doing exercise, move it to 50. The next number is the gain for the limbs, and so it says L is equal to X1. There are 3 different limb gains. It can either be H, which is a half, it can be 1, which is the normal, or it can be double the gain. So you have the ability to change the amplitude of the complexes. You can either half it, keep it at 1, or you can double it. So right now the limb is at 1. So if you found that your complexes were too big and going off the page, you would put it to half. If they were too small, you could double it. The next gain is the C for the chest. So there's a separate gain for the limbs and for the chest. Right now the chest gain is on 1. The only thing you can do with the chest gain is half it, because typically the electrodes are close to the heart, so you're going to get a very good signal. But if your signal is too large and it's going off the trace, then you can half it. And the last thing on top is for the filter. So right now it says filter is on. So right now I'm looking at the 4 numbers. It's saying the speed is at 50, the limb gain is at 1, the chest gain is at 1, and the filter is on. So those are my 4 settings. If I want to change those, it's relatively straightforward. The first number is ID. So if I press this number, I could put in an ID number, and when you would use that is if you had subjects with different ID numbers. We're not going to use that because you know who your subject is going to be. The next button says AMP. AMP, so if you press that button, it allows you to change the limb gain, the chest gain, and the filter. So I'm going to press this AMP button. If I want to change the limb gain, I push the button under the limb, and that allows me to change it to 2, change it to half, or change it to 1. I could do the same thing for the chest gain. I could half it or have it be 1. Or the filter, I can turn the filter on or turn the filter off. You always want the filter on unless you are doing the technical problem where I'm asking you to turn the filter off. And then when you set everything, you just hit return. So now you know that all your settings are correct. Now what you need to do is you need to turn the machine on to get the trace running. And the way you will do that is you will press manual. And as soon as I press manual, the tape will start to run. And then if I want to do a lead 1 trace, I press lead 1. If I want to do a lead 2 trace, I'll press lead 2. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to calibrate when you first turn on the machine. I want you to get a 1 millivolt calibration signal. So what a 1 millivolt calibration signal does is it's telling the machine that this is what 1 millivolt looks like on a piece of paper. So now if you're looking at amplitudes and you want to determine the amplitudes of complexes, you know that 1 millivolt is this distance. So when we turn the machine on, press 1 MV, and it puts a calibration square, and so now you know what 1 millivolt looks like. So it's important to have a calibration signal, and typically if you're working with a subject or a patient, you're going to do a calibration signal at the beginning of the experiment or of the testing, and you're also going to do a calibration signal at the end just to make sure that it hasn't changed. So again, the purpose of that is that you could measure that distance and say this is what 1 millivolt is. So when you're measuring your QRS complexes, you can look at that and determine what the amplitude of your QRS complexes is. So do a millivolt at the beginning and do a millivolt calibration signal at the end. The other button on the machine is auto, and what auto will do is it will sequentially go through the 12 different leads. So if you're doing a 12 lead ECG on a subject, you would press auto, and then it would automatically go through lead 1, lead 2, AVR, AVL, AVF. But for our purposes, we're going to use manual. We're going to press manual, have it run, then we're going to press lead 1, get a long enough strip, press lead 2, and go from there so that we sequentially go through all 12 of the leads. So that's pretty much it.